Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of Sunday, December 15th, 2024. Today we have a fascinating dialogue in store for you between two U.S. political parties, the U.S. Transhumanist Party and the U.S. Pirate Party. So joining us from the Transhumanist Party is our team of officers, including Art Ramon Garcia, our Director of Visual Art, Ben Ballweg, our Director of Longevity Outreach, Daniel Tweed, who was our 2024 U.S. Vice Presidential candidate and is our Director of Citizen and Community Science. And we have our member from Texas who leads the Texas Transhumanist Party, Alan Crowley. And from the U.S. Pirate Party, we have Jolly Mitch DeVillo, who is the head of the Illinois Pirate Party and the former swarm care manager of the U.S. Pirate Party. And also we have previously joining us, Darren McKeeman, who is the treasurer of the U.S. and California Pirate Parties and the host of the Talk the Plank podcast, where I was interviewed just this Friday, December 13th. So hopefully we'll get Darren back shortly, but we do have Mitch. And Mitch, I would invite you to introduce yourself and speak a bit about the Pirate Party and what the Pirate Party stands for in the United States as well as in Illinois.
Of course. So ahoy, my name is Jolly Mitch DeVillo. I am as previously stated, I am the captain of the Illinois Pirate Party, which is just the state chapter of the United States Pirate Party. And I am a former I'm a former two-time swarm care manager twice over for the United States Pirate Party. So the United States Pirate Party, to summarize, we believe in personal privacy and government transparency. That's usually the blanket elevator pitch that I give to people, just to say we think that a government that is running off your tax dollars should not be keeping secrets from you. It is your business. You should be able to know what's going on with your money, your business. On the flip side of it, you should be able to have your own privacy. It's your life. You know, they shouldn't be monitoring you. They shouldn't be surveilling you like they do. We believe that the government works for you, and it's not the other way around. So the thing with the United States Pirate Party that I really like pushing forward is when you get to the United States Pirate Party, you find that it becomes a more localized party. For example, a Illinois pirate is not the same as a Massachusetts pirate. While we have our same core values and what we believe was members of the United States Pirate Party is the same, we do have issues that are more specific to our communities. And the more local you get, the more localized the Pirate Party issues get. If you look at Massachusetts, a lot of their issues do stem from Massachusetts state issues, as they should. I think one of the things that people get lost in modern politics is you have the nationwide issues that the Democrats and the Republicans, they push to the forefront, and it's nationwide blanket issues, and it's oftentimes a part of the culture war. It's oftentimes a part of divisiveness and just a way to, it's a distraction really at the end of the day. It hardly harkens on issues that matter and issues that can be, that can cause change and can actually impact people. When you look at the Pirate Party, we try not to push these nationwide issues at the forefront. We really try to look for the communal, what's more important in your community. When you look at the Illinois Pirate Party, we have Illinois-centered issues. We still have the core values of the pirates, but it is it is more localized. We understand that in this country where you hear a lot of people, especially from the Republicans, say America first. In the United States Pirate Party, I believe it's the United States first. You know, we're the United States of America. And some people view America as the country. We view America as the continent, from North and South America, from Greenland to Argentina. You know, that is America. That, people from this continent are American. We are the United States. And as members of the United States, we are a wide collection of people, a very diverse group. You know, someone from California and someone from New England is not the same person. But in this union, we are united through common goals, and we work better together. So I think if you're asking me what the United States Pirate Party is, we're for you, and we're the party of you. And if you get involved with your local pirate party, you'll see what I mean.
Yes, thank you very much for that overview. And a lot of what you said resonates with us in the Transhumanist Party, in particular, the protection for individual privacy. That is section 1 of our platform, and our viewers can find our platform's provisions on civil liberties via the link shown here. So section 1 reads, "The United States Transhumanist Party strongly supports individual privacy and liberty over how to apply technology to one's personal life." And it further reads, "The United States Transhumanist Party holds that each individual should remain completely sovereign in the choice to disclose or not disclose personal activities, preferences, and beliefs within the public sphere. As such, the United States Transhumanist Party opposes all forms of mass surveillance and any intrusion by governmental or private institutions upon non-coercive activities that an individual has chosen to retain within his, her, or its private sphere. There's a caveat, though. However, the United States Transhumanist Party also recognizes that no individual should be protected from peaceful criticism of any matters that those individuals have chosen to disclose within the sphere of public knowledge and discourse." So I wonder how much of that resonates with you, given the Pirate Party's stances on privacy.
I think very much so it resonates. In fact, I did my due diligence, and I made sure to look over the Transhumanist Party platform long before I ever reached out to you guys. I like to really get involved and know who we're working with, because at the end of the day, we're all working together. And I think the Pirate Party and the Transhumanist Party have a lot more in common than what may meet the eye. And I think this is the big one, that the very essence of just personal privacy and just the personal autonomy to use technology, and just it resonates in a major way. And I don't think you're going to find a single pirate or anyone involved in the pirate movement that's going to disagree with that platform position.
Very good. And I also wonder, in terms of the relationship to technology, how does the Pirate Party view various emerging technologies? So the U.S. Transhumanist Party, of course, advocates for radical life extension, and that requires the progress of medicine and biotechnology. We also advocate the progress of automation and AI. And of course, we see the internet as potentially a great tool of individual liberation. We want to protect individual privacy as well. I'm wondering how the Pirate Party approaches the technologies of the present, as well as the emerging technologies that are going to be quite a bit more influential in the future.
Well, I suppose the one thing is, with the Pirate Party, as these issues arise, the solutions must be addressed, or the issue has to be addressed as the issue comes. However, when it comes to technology, I seem to be under the impression, now I don't want to speak blanketly for pirates across, the land and across the world. However, this is a party that was founded in the 21st century, and it's a movement founded in the 21st century. And whilst I don't think the transhumanist movement is necessarily a 21st century movement, it could be a little bit older than that. The U.S. Transhumanist Party was founded in the 21st century, as was our own party. So I do think that we together have a advantage in the sense that we are a little more open to technological advancements that may happen in the 21st century. And when you look at certain things that are introduced now, for example, AI is a big thing that people are, it seems to be a very controversial thing. People love it, people hate it. There doesn't seem to be a neutral stance on it. And funny enough, it kind of reminds me about 10, 15 years ago when musicians started using autotune, where people said, oh, you can't sing if you're using autotune. It kind of reminds me of, oh, you're not an artist if you're using AI or whatever. And I think people don't realize what they have in front of them is a tool, that using AI is an ability to help you. It's not supposed to be the crutch, but you can use it as this, or I guess you do use it as a crutch. It's not supposed to be the baseline. You can, if you're looking for assistance, if you say, I need 50 synonyms for this word, and then you pick the best one. It doesn't need to be big things. It's meant to be an assistance. I think in life in general, and I forget where I picked up this phrase from, but anything for most people, growing up, anything that's around when you're a kid is just life. Anything that's introduced until you're about 35 is, wow, technology is amazing. And anything past 35 is, oh my God, the world's so scary. What's happening? And I don't think of life that way. I think that the world's constantly ever changing. We didn't have time zones until 1890s. So, we have to embrace change as they come and understand that society is going to get better as things improve, that we live in an existence of trial and error. And if we're scared of change, then you're just scared of life. Change can be a good thing. And when we have technological change that could be beneficial to humanity and just to life on Earth in general, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Indeed. And it does seem to me that a lot of people who are fearful of technological change mostly exhibit status quo bias. As you pointed out, they're used to a certain configuration of the world, and that is typically the configuration that prevailed when they were younger and their immediate surroundings. And when that changes dramatically, they tend to react against it. But the way to counter status quo bias is, first of all, to have historical perspective. As you pointed out, a lot of the fixtures of our everyday lives are quite recent, but also to recognize that the status quo is not static, that the moment that we are living in is just one stage in the evolution of our society and our civilization, and we do need to anticipate futures that are dramatically different from the present and the past. Our friend Carlos Neto writes, technology has the potential to set us free, including from time, and hopefully through radical life extension, that will be achieved in a very real and physical way, but also through the kind of historical perspective that I mentioned, we can get a much broader view of what is possible. Our friend Mike Lazine writes that he agrees with you, Mitch. A lot of artists do not sound so great when you see them perform live many times, but auto-tune helps them a lot. And Jason Geringer, who also notes that he has spoken with you a few times on Discord, has heard the same thing about electric guitars back when his uncle said it's just plastic music, and now electric guitars are fairly widely accepted. We also have another comment from Mike Lazine, who speed read through the Wikipedia article on the U.S. Pirate Party, and they seem like the perfect party to join up with, especially if they are against the current DMCA that needs to be revamped. So the DMCA, for those who don't know, is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and this act has enabled essentially a system of takedown notices that copyright holders can file against content creators. And in order to protect itself from liability, a platform such as YouTube, for instance, will often preemptively take down content for the mere allegation of a copyright infringement, even if it turns out later on that the DMCA takedown notice was frivolous. But I do wonder what the Pirate Party's stance on the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is, and how the Pirate Party would propose to replace it or improve upon the situation or abolish it. What would be the desired approach there?
Well, the major Pirate Party position on our platform, which you could find at uspirates.org/platform, would be the reworking of the length of copyright, especially, and ironically talking about it here after the death of the author, whereas I believe now it's set to it's something outrageous, and I want to say it's like 70 years after the death of the author, and I think we were aiming for 10 to 14 years as a more reasonable time frame. But it's you said it. The copyright, when it comes to like YouTube, now I watch a lot of YouTube channels that get stricken down for copyrighted materials quite a bit, whether it's historical or professional wrestling, which I'm in the wrestling business, so I'm a big fan of watching, clips, and those get copyright struck all the time. It's one of those things, whereas it's an issue that not a lot of people think is important because they don't think it affects their everyday life. Not a lot of people think copyright is this whole big thing. They just think it's an inconvenience, if anything, if you get copyright struck, but they think it's a necessary evil, so to speak, because a lot of people think it helps artists. And a lot of times these copyright laws are designed to just help corporations, and it hurts the little guy. So, and then you have systems where I've seen people get copyright struck for their own material. We had Vermin Supreme at the 2024 Pirate National Convention, and we tried to play a intro video for Vermin, and it got copyright struck. It's Vermin's video. Vermin's on our stream. So it's people think because it's not at the forefront and that it's not a major life-altering issue, that's not important. That's just not true. It absolutely needs to be addressed, needs to be tweaked, needs to be altered, needs to be fixed.
Yeah. Hey, can I get a sound check real quick?
Yes. Alan, you are good. You are good. So please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I had some sound issues earlier. I just want to say that I really appreciate your view on putting the United States first. I mean, it's already like that, literally in the title. It's United States of America. All rhetoric aside of Canada becoming the next set of states for the USA, but I think that's fantastic. And I was going to recommend, I always want to say Yuri, but it's Yuval Noah Harari, his latest book about networks of communication. And I think that's so important that we actually kind of pay attention to how we discuss these issues. And I think you're right on target with this idea that, people have sort of a limited idea of what was around when I was a kid is natural, and this newfangled stuff, that's too complicated to be real or whatever. I think that's how some people view it. And I'm with you. I've never seen it that way. I've seen the change in my life. I mean, I remember watching the moon landing on my 12-inch diameter black and white, or diagonal measurement black and white TV, and now it's hard to drive down the street at night and not be able to see somebody's 5 foot by 4 foot TV inside their living room from the street. And usually it's got cat videos or something ridiculous, not the moon landing. But I just want to say I really like what you're talking about locality rather than nationality. And I think that's really important. So rock on and all.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Alan, for those good words. And the book by Yuval Noah Harari in question is Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI. Here is the link for it on Amazon if anybody wishes to check it out. And I would also invite other members of our panel to pose questions or comments. Let's start with Art Ramon.
Yeah, I remember like back in 2005, there was a lot of websites. Stop the North American Union. It was like right-wingers were just very anti, North American Union, the concept of creating sort of a super state with the US, Canada, and Mexico. But it seems like recently Trump's been suggesting it and everyone's just fine with it. What are your thoughts on this? He said the 51st state being Canada, so it's kind of a slow introduction. And then later on, he said 52nd for Mexico. I always have had this belief that there's been this sort of plot to sort of create a North American Union, and it's always been there. There's been a lot of laws that kind of assisted with that. I don't remember what they are now, but I would think that any collapse of the U.S. is going to quickly rise as a North American Union. What are your thoughts?
So as it stands, we to clarify the Pan American plank in the United States Pirate Party, we don't necessarily advocate for let's make sure we have this giant union, so to speak. However, what we do have is a self-determination plank where we state that a people group or any group of people who wish to, I believe the phrase or terminology is alter, change, remove yourself, or join in union, essentially covering all the bases of if you wish to join in a political entity, you're allowed to. If you wish to remove yourself from a political entity, you're allowed to. If any Canadian province legitimately and voted on it and democratically said, let's leave Canada and join the U.S., the U.S. Pirate Party won't be the ones to say, don't do that, that's bad. But I don't think we're the ones advocating for that. However, we do advocate for free travel within the American continent. We don't think that you should be limited to how you travel within your own home. We're all born on the American continent, like I said. So I think that we do believe that the sanctity of what you wish to represent yourself as, if you see yourself as an American from the Americas, fantastic. If you see yourself as an American because you're a part of the union and that's what, first, fine. But ultimately, the system we have in place with the United States, how we can travel freely between the states within the union, and that it operates very well, and there's an interconnected economy, and while yes, it's the same country, we are a big country, and states in the United States are as big as countries in Europe. So I mean, we are able we have a phenomenal setup and a phenomenal economy. And just the way that it works, and I think in America, the continent, we should be able to just travel around and really work together and be interconnected. And I don't think that punishing your neighbor, saying you're not allowed to come here, and the sanctions that we have on certain countries in the Americas, it bothers the hell out of me, and it's not something the U.S. Pirate Party ever wants to see as bad relations. I think a good neighbor policy, a real good neighbor policy, is what we strive for.
Yes, indeed. And I do sympathize with the advocacy of free movement throughout the Americas, free trade, exchange of cultural output, and generally friendship, because I think any hostilities that have been, let's say, drummed up, especially recently between, say, the United States and Mexico, or even the United States and Canada now, are entirely artificial. They're entirely the result of certain demagogues trying to rally certain demographics of Americans around a perceived common enemy that doesn't really exist. And shifting to a more collaborative approach is definitely an area with which the U.S. Transhumanist Party is aligned. So we do find the Pan-Americanism plank of the U.S. Pirate Party to resonate with us. We are also, unlike both the Republican and Democratic parties, advocates of increased immigration to the United States and greater ease of legal immigration as well, because we recognize one of the reasons why so many people choose to immigrate to the US illegally is because the legal immigration system is just so difficult and filled with roadblocks. And if one does allow free movement and greater ease of legal immigration for people who are willing to be peaceful and law-abiding and productive, that is just going to be a net win for everybody. All right. So now let us see if Daniel Tweed has a question or comment.
Oh man, I have so many. I'm so glad this meeting of the minds happened. I recommended this a while back, and I hope this kind of dialogue can continue. But I think what's interesting about politics is definitely local. I ran for city council 4 times, because I thought that's a great way to get local politics done. But I think the current political binary option is kind of, the Democrats say they're more aligned with cooperative values. The Republicans are more aligned with competitive values. But actually, you need a very well orchestrated, synergy between competition and cooperation. And, one thing that I think this could be done is the Henry Georgist idea of taking the commons and putting it into a marketplace rental structure where if there's something that you didn't create that's a pre-existing commons, you don't need to have a war over who's controlling it. You need to have this synthesis of cooperation and competition, which I think, Geoism, Georgism really expresses. And I've been preaching about this whenever I got a chance to do a candidate forum. But look up land value taxation, look up market capitalism, structured capitalism. But even Jefferson privately expressed that in a letter. He didn't want it to be made public, but he said it's wrong for one generation to foist a constitution, on another generation. That really every 20 years, each generation should be voting anew on the essence of the contract they want society to be working under. And so those are some thoughts. Another thing is that, I told my sister about the pirate party and she's like, ew, pirates, they're terrible. They go around, killing and robbing. And I'm like, no, it's not about, they're talking about the open source, actually American democracy is very based on pirate ship democracy. It's equal share of the booty and one person, one vote, except during wartime. Then you got to have a, commander in chief, because there's no time to make a vote when you're, at war. So, but yeah, I think the Pirate Party suffers from a little bit of the same name baggage as Transhumanist Party. But if we can just, keep facilitating this idea that there's strengths and, weaknesses to competition and cooperation, and they can be made complementary and more local, I think that's the future of intelligent evolution friendly politics. So I don't know, is there a question in there? Are you guys kind of like, do you think the states' rights confederacy like believers would have been pirate party people? Not to say that slavery was good or anything, but I get the sense you guys are more into confederation than federalism. Would that be a fair initial characterization of pirate politics?
Oh, I've never been asked would the Confederates have been pirates. That's an interesting question. So thank you for laying it out like that. However, I in my heart, I'm going to say no, because I think a core tenet of the Pirate Party would have been slavery is wrong, because the autonomy of a human being should be respected. And I couldn't imagine a world where the slave-owning Confederates would be sympathetic to the Pirate Party ideals. However, in terms of confederalism, versus federalism, I would say that there may be an argument. When talking about the Civil War, just briefly touching upon the Civil War, something we lost in the dialogue of it is it tends to be the Confederates said, oh, no, it was about states' rights. And the Unionists say, no, it was about slavery, when there's kind of truth in both statements. It was the states' rights to own a slave, but it was still states' rights was a major issue of the Civil War. And Lincoln did not invade the South to end slavery at first. That was not the goal of the invasion. The goal was to preserve the Union, which, you know, when you say the ends justified the means, 100%. Slavery is gone in the United States. Chattel slavery is gone in the United States. We still have to deal with the 13th Amendment, which says that slavery is not abolished in time of punishment, which means that slavery during prison sentencing is still very much an issue in this country that we have to address. However, I just wanted to say the idea of states' rights is one that tends to get bastardized due to the terrible history of the Confederacy and their usage of it. We're not necessarily. I think we're stronger together. We as a union, we are much stronger together than we would be as separate states. If we were 50 separate states, it would just be a very. It would be a weaker situation than what we're in now, just economically and socially and culturally. I think that if a state wants to leave, they should have that right. However, I think that there still needs to be a democratic consensus on it, and there still needs to be the will of the people need to be heard. And that's really what it boils down to, is the will of the people. And when you look at the Confederacy, the will of the people wasn't heard because you had 3 million people in chattel slavery. So that was not the will of the people. That was the will of an elite class of chattel slave owning farmers. And I don't support the Confederacy. But I did want to support something you mentioned about Henry George and land value tax, because it had to be about 18 months ago, and maybe it's going to be close to 2 years. But I posted a editorial on the United States Pirate Party website called "Taxation is Mass Surveillance." And it was just a statement where I wasn't advocating for anything other than pointing out that in the United States, taxation does require a large amount of surveillance on you. You have to know where you work, you have to know where you live, or you have to know this or that, or how much you made. However, the one system of taxation that does not need to really interfere in your privacy is land value tax, because it's just how much land do you own? How much land are you taking up for yourself? This is how much you owe. And it's a very pro-privacy tax, and it's something that I've been Georgist longer than I've been pirate. You know, I read Henry George before I found out what the U.S. Pirate Party was. And I've never heard that privacy slant until a couple of years volunteering for the party. And it really, it sold me. Like, as much as I believed in it before, it was like, finally I could push it towards the pirates and we can maybe get this somewhere. Unsuccessfully, but I was able to get an article on the website. So it's something I think a lot of people should look more into. Read Henry George, read Progress and Poverty. And just taxation on land for free movements. If you move somewhere and you take up a certain piece of land and you're paying the land value tax, who cares where you're from? You're paying the value of the land you're using. It's just, it seems, even the joke on the internet is land value tax would solve this. But there's a lot of situations when land value tax would solve this.
Interesting. So on the subject of the Confederacy, we actually do have a position in our platform. This is section 31, which states the United States Transhumanist Party supports the right of any jurisdiction to secede from the United States, specifically in opposition to policies that institutionalize racism, xenophobia, criminalization of dissent, and persecution of peaceful persons. The United States Transhumanist Party does not, however, condone any secession for the purposes of oppressing others. Therefore, the secession of the Confederate States in 1860 was illegitimate, but a future secession of a state may be justified in reaction to violent crackdowns by the federal government against individuals based on individuals' national origin or ancestry. So we definitely do not approve of the Confederacy. What our stance may be on a future secession, if any, would depend on the grounds for such a secession and what the federal government's policies and practices are at the time. But certainly, I think a distinction needs to be made among the reasons for secession. The United States itself was formed via a secession from Great Britain, and clearly we, or most of us, think that those reasons were sufficient and justified to bring about the formation of the US. Now, not every secession was as nobly motivated as the American founding. We have a lot of comments in our chat. So first of all, Jason Geringer writes, the free trade between us and Canada and Mexico is hugely beneficial to all the economies. Tariffs are a hugely stupid idea, and I would agree with that. The U.S. Transhumanist Party also supports free trade. And Mike Lazine writes, this is also the way he feels. He thinks it's absurd that to go to Mexico or Canada, you need a passport or need to show your ID or license and a copy of your birth certificate. He would love to see that end. Alan points out that it's only since about 2005 that U.S. citizens needed a passport to go to Mexico. So actually, freedom of movement on the North American continent has been significantly limited even since the start of this millennium. Our friend Luis Arroyo writes that the U.S. doing away with embargoes and sanctions on nations in the Western Hemisphere would be interesting. And on the subject of immigration, Alan writes, bingo, the difficulty of navigating our massive bureaucracy, both civil and governmental, can be frustrating to no ends. Making it complicated simply encourages people to circumvent the rules and take matters into their own hands. Yes, and that's why greater ease of legal immigration would also reduce illegal immigration. Jason writes, economically speaking, immigrants are always a net positive for an economy. There's a cultural effect that is an outside effect, but if you are just talking about the economy, it is a plus. On the subject of Georgism, Corchet writes that he likes the distinction between natural and man-made capital in Henry George's thinking. And our friend Siba Chamuza, who is our foreign ambassador in Togo, writes that he thinks that the growing power of the United States of America would also be due to its openness to valuing all talents from all over the world. And indeed, one reason why the US is a global superpower and the most prosperous economy in the world is because it has assimilated individuals and ideas from all over the world and made use of many of the best ideas, the most talented people. And if that stops or if that is throttled, then the United States leadership position would also be hampered. On the subject of copyright, Jason Geringer writes that record producers take advantage of artists all the time, and there's a long history of bad things happening there. And often, I think a lot of people fail to understand copyright is appropriated not so much by the individual artists, but by record labels or publishers, and those entities will sometimes limit the artists and the creators themselves in terms of what they can do with the content that they originated. Now, we have a question from Luis Arroyo. Is there a pirate party in New York State or New York City?
There is one forming. There used to be an official Pirate Party of New York. The captain of the Pirate Party of New York is still around. However, the party, and this was before my time, something had happened where I don't know what happened, whether it was I actually, ironically enough, I think it was a copyright issue with the website. But there was something that ended up happening, and they ended up just folding, which is a shame. You hate to see a state party leave or fold or anything like that. But sometimes these things do happen where people want to get involved and they want to, get moving and get something started, and they realize how hard it is, and they may back out or fall out. Luckily for us, the person who was running New York is still around. She's fantastic, and she should be able to help anyone who wants to get involved from New York State or New York City. She is from New York City as well, so if you're looking to get involved, or if anyone's looking to get involved, the New York Pirate Party Twitter is open again. I believe she was able to find all the information, log in. So we are trying to get it up and running again actively, though the state of New York is not a voting member of the Pirate National Committee. So there's not a official New York branch.
Understood. And best wishes in getting the New York Pirate Party resurrected. Yes, the notion that there was some sort of copyright issue getting in the way is a bit ironic and unfortunate, I would say. But yes, sometimes those issues can arise in the unlikeliest of places, and this is one more reason why our copyright system is in need of some serious reform. Now, Ben Ballweg observes in our internal chat that in Europe recently, the ease of movement across boundaries seemed to be a value universally appreciated by the Europeans he met. And indeed, this is one of the greatest advantages of the EU, how easy it is to travel from one country to another, especially given that the countries are typically much smaller there and quite nearby. If one didn't have that freedom of mobility, I think one would feel rather confined in a given European country. So Ben, would you like to speak to that to a greater extent or ask another question?
I'll ask another, but yeah, that'd be kind of neat to have a little more freedom across our boundaries with Mexico and Canada. But with the current temper of the U.S., I feel like the one with Mexico might be a little while yet. So a question here. Why was a party chosen as the correct medium for achieving the United States Pirate Party's goals, as opposed to like a nonprofit, a lobby, et cetera? Or what about just working to support an existing nonprofit or lobby or other party?
So I think the reason the party was chosen is in Sweden on New Year's Day 2006, the Pirate Party of Sweden was the first party to push itself forward and enter the forefront and really kick off the journey of pirate politics. The United States Pirate Party was the second. So we beat every European party to this race, and we said we want to jump on this early. And I think it was momentum more than anything. I think that as they saw Sweden, the Pirate Bay was raided and Sweden starts the Pirate Party, I think we were just the first ones to say, we can do something with this. We should get on this. And it's not that we don't involve ourselves with certain nonprofits. I myself am a dues-paying member of the EFF, which is the oh my God, what does EFF stand for? Why can't I think of it off the top of my head?
Electronic
Frontier Foundation.
Thank you. I can't believe I couldn't think of that off the top of my head. My dues. My dues I'm paying.
Big chapter, Austin, Texas. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yes, they we have a couple members who are EFF members, but I just think that the issues we saw need to get brought to the forefront, and we saw Sweden forming this party and said, this is probably the best way to do it. Now, has it been the best way to do it? Third-party politics in the United States is a hard game. And actually, I want to catch myself right now. I vehemently dislike the term third party because, we have a two-party system in the sense that it's two parties that control the United States. However, The term third party makes us seem lesser. Makes us seem like, oh yeah, well, you're not Democrats, you're Republicans, you're a third party. We are minor parties. We're still political parties. We hold the same political stock that Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Greens, we're all political parties. We're all running in the same offices, and we're all trying to get into certain positions to make changes in our communities for whatever agenda or whatever goal we have. However, they're the ones with money. They're the ones with history and backers, and we, being the Transhumanist Party or the Pirate Party, don't have that luxury. That doesn't make us a lesser party. We're not a third party. We're all minor parties, and we're unrepresented parties. We don't have positions in the federal government, but that doesn't mean we should look at ourselves as, oh, well, we're fighting for a third party spot. No, we're fighting we're as politically involved as anybody. And the term third party, it rubs me the wrong way. And I caught myself just now saying it, and I just wanted to say, we're more than that. We're political parties at the end of the day, and we can really make changes. And I think the term third party, there's a negative connotation to it. I think that not just for voters, but for us, referring to ourselves in such a lesser manner, I think isn't good. I think we should all be focusing on ourselves as political parties, as equals, as equally trying to get into these elected positions. Now, I do apologize because I think I just went off in a rant and I missed the original question. So I want to bring me back into it.
Are you guys, you are enrolled with the FEC as well?
Yes. No, unfortunately, I'm not the captain of the U.S. Pirate Party. I don't have the official. I wish Darren was here, unfortunately, because he's the treasurer. But we are registered. We are affiliated. We run candidates in Massachusetts. We just had Joseph Honorowski pulling 22% of the vote against a incumbent Democrat. So, we run candidates. We are trying to make a difference in the United States. It's a slow climb. It's a slow burn. But if people are really as dissatisfied with the way things are going as I think they are, there is an opportunity for other parties, other unrepresented political parties to climb up and show face and show up. And I think our parties, the U.S. Transhumanist Party and the U.S. Pirate Party, we have a lot of shared goals and we have a lot of things in common that we can work together and make these things happen.
Yes, you did answer my question, by the way, about why you chose a political party. So thank you for answering.
Yes, and Mike Lazine points out that I do not like the term third party either. So we have that in common. I do prefer the term minor political party, also because there's more than one minor political party, and the term third party makes it seem like there are Republicans, there are Democrats, and then there's everybody else. But there are so many other political parties for people to consider. And Mike also writes, too many Americans sadly think that they always have to go Republican or Democrat, allowing themselves to be locked in. And we would certainly agree with that. Interesting. Luciferius Ratspeed writes, third world, third party, same bias. Interesting observation. And Alan writes, both of the major parties in the U.S. are going through some fundamental changes. The GOP is now MAGA, Make America Great Again, and who knows what the Democrats will become. And yes, this realignment of the two major political parties also shows they're not really principled organizations. They can be captured by various movements of the day. So if people want to advocate for particular policies or particular visions of the world, those two parties are not the best mechanisms for doing that, because they can very easily be co-opted to support the opposite of one's values. As an example, the Republican Party, up until the emergence of Trump, used to be predominantly anti-tariff and pro-free trade, with some exceptions. George W. Bush did impose some steel tariffs, but most Republicans were talking about the need to lower tariffs and increase commerce. And with Trump, that changed completely. Or, as another example, who was it among the US presidents that granted the greatest amnesty for immigrants in the United States? It was Ronald Reagan in 1986. And now the Republican Party is supporting mass deportations and still claiming to praise or admire Reagan in some ways. It seems to me that in some ways, the Republican Party has become the diametrical opposite of what it was 30 to 40 years ago. Now, Alan has an example to share about freedom of movement between Germany and France. So, Alan, please go ahead.
Yeah, when I was deployed there, looks like I'm frozen, but when I was deployed to Germany with my family, we got to do some travel and we went across the border to France. And it was really sort of surrealistic to go to France and to drive across the Lorraine River there, and on both sides of the river, I mean, within sight of the freeway, were large cement gun emplacements that had been there from before the Second World War, and as we got closer to the place to actually cross the river, was a little island in the middle of the river, and on that island was what would look like a modern border crossing, similar to what you've seen if you've gone into Canada or some of the 29 entries along the southern border. However, it was all boarded up with plywood in the windows, weeds growing up around it, and a chain link fence had been added around the things. I guess the vandals wouldn't get inside. And we just drove right by all that stuff. And it was, of course, my kids were loving, they got to study European history. It was required at school, but they got to drive around and actually see it. So it was pretty fantastic to experience that with them and see within the space of a few miles this change over the last 100 years to go from cement encased cannon positions to a border crossing where IDs were checked and people stood in line, to just rolling right over all that on a nice, comfortable piece of highway. It was great. So, I'm sure they did. I'm sure the Europeans did love the advent of the borderless European Union. I've got other stories about that border that aren't appropriate for this, but that border is pretty amazing. And I think it's the same when we travel like Texas to Louisiana or Oklahoma or some other third world country, then it's great to be able to just drive across. Kidding to all you folks in Louisiana and Oklahoma, but it's great to be able to drive across freely. So yeah, I hope we can get that sorted out for the better.
Yes, indeed. So an interesting question from Jason Geringer. Did the Pirate Party have any part of its origin in the Linux philosophy of open source software? And Jason also points out there was a whole community of people behind Linux and Pirate Bay that essentially wanted to give people the ability to set up their PCs absolutely for free. And I've tried some Linux setups on my computer before. My impression is, yes, they're free. They require a bit more technical skill to operate than Windows, but they are based on an entirely different philosophy, which essentially allows the user to control and customize everything. So I wonder if a lot of pirates are enthusiasts of Linux or similar open source software.
Yes, absolutely. That is actually very foundational to our origins. Whereas most of the time, if you ask a pirate, we will say that our origins stem in anything that is considered pirate, in the sense that if you look at pirate radio, seafaring pirates, internet piracy, that's what we are. That's the United States Pirate Party. That's what we represent. That's where we come from. But from a real historical scholarly standpoint, it was from Linux community and the Pirate Bay, and it was a big hacktivist community. Obviously, the Pirate Party nowadays has become a little more Catholic, for lack of a better term, a little more all-inclusive, a little more you have a lot. It's more of a marketplace of ideas, I'll say. Whereas you have a lot of people who come into the Pirate Party and have their ideas, and it's what's beautiful thing is you have a space where people communicate, and you don't see that very often. That it becomes very dogmatic, and people want to stick with what they believe, and very, 10 toes down, feet in the sand. This is what I believe, and you're wrong for not believing what I believe. And that you don't see that in the Pirate Party. We have socialists, we have communists, we have libertarians, we have radical centrists, we have everybody. Everybody comes together, and we truly communicate, and we truly get down to the nitty gritty. And where our origins may come from the hacktivist community and the Linux users and the Pirate Bay, and that is absolutely the origins of it. We are absolutely it's become more of that. We absolutely acknowledge our origins, but when you still definitely see those people in the Pirate Party, but we have definitely become more than just like where we started.
Yes, thank you for that explanation. And it seems that over time, the Pirate Party has become more of a big tent, like the Transhumanist Party as well. So we have intentionally adhered to a big tent philosophy, especially during my tenure as chairman, and we have welcomed people all over the conventional political spectrum and people with unconventional political views and people who are not particularly political, because again, we want to be inclusive. We want to facilitate collaborations among all people who are interested in creating a better future for humanity through the aid of science and technology. So definitely a similar trajectory of our respective organizations' development. Now, Jason also notes we in the Transhumanist Party support bodily autonomy, and he is curious about what the Pirate Party thinks about morphological freedom, which is the concept that an individual has the ability to alter its appearance, functionality, health characteristics, as long as it doesn't harm others. So would the Pirate Party say that bodily autonomy and morphological freedom are essentially the same thing? Would you be in favor of, say, the right of people to augment themselves or experiment with various technologies or medical treatments once they become available?
I would say it would be awful hypocritical for the party whose origins lie in peg legs and hooks for hands to say that bodily autonomy and alteration, modification is wrong. So I definitely, we're in full support of that. It's your body, it's your life, it's your choice. So that we're the originators. We believe in it wholeheartedly.
Yes, indeed. So the original pirates had prosthetic limbs centuries ago in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. And yes, they were practitioners of morphological freedom. So Alan also points out on the issues surrounding copyright that now some large corporations of bots that crawl the web to find music that does not have copyright, then they copyright it and sue the user. Now that's troubling on multiple fronts. First of all, my understanding is US copyright law by default grants copyright to the author or creator. So these companies are breaking the law in doing this, but they seem to be getting away with it simply because of their sheer dominance and their ability to afford expensive litigation that their targets may not be able to afford. But Alan, if you have any more comments on this practice and where you've observed it and how these corporations essentially steal people's creative products, even within the US copyright system, this would be theft. And these corporations would be abusing copyright law in order to bring about this outcome.
Yeah, I think your understanding matches mine. It looks like I'm frozen on my end. I'll just go with that. The copyright law does indicate exactly what you say. The creator of the music owns the music, but then the issue becomes, can you defend that in court? And that's the idea. They've got the money for the lawyers, and they've got time on their side. So most independent, YouTubers and people like that. Just been following one particular case where the person was using, I think it was a work by Chopin, but they said that was an infringement right. And so he fought that legal battle, and it was determined that, okay, that's not infringement. One, because the author's been deceased a long time, but also even the band that recorded that version did it 50 years ago. So he still went ahead and recorded a piece very similar, almost note for note, but with some changes and even some electronic effects added to make sure it was, could be distinguished as his own specific. He copywrote that and put it back on his bumper music on his YouTube channel. And that was, again, challenged. So the idea is all they got to do, all the big companies got to do is call YouTube on the phone and say, hey, this content creator is using our music, and we're going to sue them. And of course, what YouTube's policy is, well, then we demonetize them until we get this sorted out. And so it's kind of a real burden on, small-time YouTube creator. So that's all I've got on that. I don't have a lot of details. It's not something I've done any thorough research about. But
yes, but thank you for that explanation. And I'm glad that this YouTube creator who played Chopin at least got some sort of justice, though the bots struck back, it seems. And that's the problem with bots. They're very easy to deploy and almost consequence-free because they don't respond to the same kinds of incentives that humans do. If you have a human who is submitting the takedown notice, at least you can talk to the human and reach some sort of agreement or understanding. With the bots, they can just deploy them over and over again. So that would be a troubling and concerning use of technology from our standpoint. But there was another example fairly recently of a rehearsal video for the Magic Flute opera that was about to be performed in San Jose, California, and I actually attended the performance subsequently. But in this rehearsal video, essentially, there was a soprano singing an aria from the Magic Flute, the Queen of the Night aria, and that got taken down on Facebook. It essentially was silenced in certain jurisdictions because of a copyright claim, I think by Sony, or Warner Brothers. I think it was Warner Brothers who submitted the copyright claim. And this was ridiculous because Mozart predated Warner Brothers, and this was an original performance. This was literally that soprano singing the Queen of the Night aria. And I think Facebook ultimately unmuted that video and restored it to full accessibility after people complained. But Facebook and other platforms have been known for using bots for algorithmic censorship. And again, the problem is the presumption is in favor of the person who asserts a copyright violation or the entity who asserts a copyright violation. And when bots are involved in this and can just submit a barrage of claims of copyright violations without proof, that presumption that this is a valid claim of infringement needs to be ceased. I think there's no more justification for it, even if there might have been some sort of way to justify it in the early 2000s. I don't think that's any longer the case. Now, Mike Lazine points out in our YouTube comments, copywriting music is a serious burden, especially if indie artists are not making lots of money for their music. But one doesn't even have to submit a copyright application to the US government. Current copyright law gives the artist an automatic copyright on their work. The problem is with these bots, they try to nonetheless assert copyright infringement, even with respect to original content. Jason writes, some of the terms of service for publishers like TuneCore and DistroKid are some of the worst that he has ever seen, worse than the record companies. And Jason points out that one has to have a publisher to put tunes on Spotify or other platforms like that, so artists have no choice but to use one of those publishers. And that's where the onerous terms come in. He also states you should be able to be a producer and publish music. So yes, I think people should be able to independently publish content and bypass these publishers, these distributors who don't seem to add a lot of values these days. Now, I think Ben has an interesting comment in our internal chat. We're starting to dance around corporate personhood and welfare. So, Mitch, I know the Pirate Party has some positions on those issues. So if you would like to weigh in on how the Pirate Party sees corporations, the idea of corporate personhood, and some of the problems with that idea. Oh, I think, Mitch, you are on mute.
Sorry about
for whatever reason. Okay. Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. So the thing with corporate personhood is it is not real. It is a concept that I believe it was ultimately a Supreme Court mistake. I believe Citizens United is the Supreme Court case in which I'm referring to, where they said money is free speech and and corporations are allowed to donate as much money as they want. And I think that it's not the downfall of recent U.S. politics, but I do think that is a big, big factor in the corruption of it, where this endless amount of money is flowing into politics, and it's coming from these corporate entities especially. We are a people-first party, but corporations are not people. Corporations are corporations. And I have yet to see a corporation that people have said, you know what? They really looked out for the little guy. You don't see that. I think that if you run a business, you have a responsibility to the people that that are patronizing your business or servicing you in some way. And just when it comes to copyright and this corporate personhood, corporations laying out copyright claims is bullshit, because it's not, you didn't create it. It's not yours. You signed someone that's on your record label or your company, and it's just it's a mess. But corporate personhood isn't real, and it's bullshit, to put it lightly. So the Pirate Party. It's one of the first things you see in our platform is corporate personhood. And trying to get the corporate money out of politics. So that's a big issue for us.
Yes, and it's interesting because looking at the Wikipedia entry for corporate personhood, one doesn't really see a specific origin in time, like a definitive point at which the Supreme Court or another body essentially asserted that corporations are people. It's more of an evolving doctrine, essentially. And even with Citizens United, the decision in 2010, that allowed corporations to make unlimited political expenditures under the First Amendment, there was really no reference to corporate personhood in the majority opinion of the Supreme Court. Rather, they stated that political speech rights do not depend on the identity of the speaker, which could be either a person or an association of people. So this corporate personhood doctrine seems to be rather nebulous. It seems to be open to interpretation, and it has been revised over the years. It could be revised again or clarified perhaps in future rulings, but it does appear to be concerning in certain respects when it allows corporations to exert prerogatives that infringe upon the rights of natural persons. And that's what we're seeing, for instance, with some of these bogus copyright claims. Now, Daniel Tweed writes in our YouTube chat that there was a decision in 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad Company, that was one of the landmark Supreme Court cases that first introduced the idea of corporate personhood. So, interesting observation. But yes, it goes way back, but not to the American founding, interestingly enough. So it's not inherent to the US Constitution or anything like that. So I also wanted to ask, since we've spent about 71 minutes on areas of similarity, essentially, between the US Transhumanist Party and the Pirate Party, Jason is wondering, what are some issues on which we might have some differences? Mitch, since you've studied our Transhumanist Party platform, I wonder if you would like to weigh in on that and at least posit a hypothesis as to areas where our two parties might be different.
Well, I will say that one of the reasons that I wanted this weekend to happen is because I saw how similar we were. And it was it wasn't necessarily the lack of differences, but it was so much the number of similarities that we shared that really attracted me to wanting to get our two parties together. In terms of differences, though, they're very minute, I would say. Sure, you would say that maybe the major key issues, whereas we don't have the life extension policy in our platform, that would be a major one. But in that same vein, I don't think life extension is anything that any pirate would necessarily have an issue against, because we believe in full bodily autonomy and the rights of the individual. I know me personally, I was raised Catholic, am Catholic, and I do, hold a personal philosophy of memento mori. You have to remember you are born to die. But I do that for my own personal, that motivates me in my life. With that being said, if someone says death is wrong, I wouldn't say, no, you're wrong. I would never do that to you. I would think that everyone in their own belief system and what they believe and what motivates them, if it ends up it is for your own personal advancement and it does not negatively affect those around you, and especially if you believe in something that positively impacts those around you, which is something I think both our parties excel in. I think that is really what is the drawing point between our two parties. The differences, I think, are very much outweighed by the similarities. So where there are differences, I do think they are minor. They're very detail orientated.
Yes, indeed. And I appreciate that discussion. I think I would be in agreement with that. And of course, as long as the Pirate Party would say that it is in agreement with the right of people to pursue longer lifespans and better healthcare and advances in medicine and related science and technology, what people's views individually are toward death is less significant, because if they're supportive of a society where people have the right to attempt those innovations, then those people will do their best to reach them. And then when we have radical life extension, essentially everybody would have the choice. Nobody would be forced to undergo those treatments, but I would venture to say more people at that point in time would look into those treatments and seriously consider them, just as they consider various advanced medical procedures today, often irrespective of their religious convictions or lack thereof. I would say there are numerous devout practicing Catholics, for instance, who would opt for any of a number of cutting-edge medical treatments to extend their lifespans and extend the amount of time they spend in good health. And Mike Lazine also points out, Jolly Mitch is right on point, since the USTP has religious people, atheists, agnostics, etc. We have a large range of people who are spiritual as well as who are not spiritual. And indeed, that is part of being a big tent political party. Now, Luis Arroyo also wonders, does the Pirate Party ever discuss workplace democracy, given how historical pirates have worked, how they've made decisions on their pirate ships? Is that an idea that comes up in Pirate Party discourse?
It absolutely is. And again, when you're discussing pirate parties, you have to look at the locality of it all. Whereas the more local you get, the more localized you get. And I know in Illinois specifically, workplace democracy is and has been a big issue for us. And we think the workplace should be more democratic. And I'm a big fan of worker-owned co-ops, for example. I think that the ability to work and earn money and get a fair share of your labor and what you put into it, I think that's so important. And if at the very least have democratic control over your workplace, it's a very important issue. I think more right to the worker, the better. I think that I look out for the common man, I guess I could say. And it's just, I think that workplace democracy is best for the worker. I think everyone should have more say in their lives, and if that includes the workplace, that includes the workplace. There was democracy on pirate ships, and there's no situation where I think democracy is a bad thing. I think there may be very extreme cases, like the example I hear in criticism of democracy is two wolves and a sheep choosing what's for dinner. And I don't think that is very emblematic of what democracy is at the end of the day. So I think more democracy, let alone more democracy in the workplace, is a good thing.
Yes, indeed. I think a lot of people would agree on that today, given that the tendency of a lot of workplace policies, especially promulgated by larger corporations, is to the detriment of the well-being of individual employees or their flexibility. There was a movement earlier on in the pandemic toward greater flexibility, remote work, more work-life balance, but that has been clawed back in a dramatic and reactionary fashion. And unfortunately, that seems to be accelerating because, for whatever reason, people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are not fans of remote work and not appreciative of the benefits that flexibility can bring to productivity, but giving workers or employees more of a voice in how the workplace is being run could provide some of those benefits. And I do think this could be implemented on a voluntary basis by organizations of various sizes, and having discussions about these ideas within political parties could help to facilitate that. Now, an interesting question from Jason. he wonders, Mitch, if you like pirate metal. He actually just found out that this was a genre of music not too long ago.
It's it's not my go-to music genre, but I like a good Ailstorm song when it comes on. It's pirate party time. I appreciate them making that song.
All right. And then Daniel Tweed also points out radical self-ownership seems to be a common feature of both of our parties, and it seems like you agree with that, Mitch. So, yes, that is a strong point of similarity that we have. And now I wonder if our panelists have further questions or comments for Mitch. Art Ramon, would you like to begin?
Sort of a conspiracy. How would you feel? You probably wouldn't like it, but the real ID laws, I'm not quite sure if that's state only, but if there was some sort of movement by the Trump administration to make those or expand those real ID laws in order to sort of root out illegals, I'm missing something, but any thoughts on that? Let's say if the Trump administration were to increase these real IDs to sort of force Americans to self-identify in order to root out illegals.
Well, I believe in free movement, and while the real ID in theory would provide free movement to U.S. citizens in the sense that I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe real ID would allow U.S. citizens to travel in lieu of passport, which that conceptually is good, but any push to expel the immigrants who are here, whether it be through legal or illegal terms, I'm not a fan of any method of mass deportation like that. So I think while in theory the idea of let's do this because then we can have more free movement for a lot of people, it's unfortunately the baggage attached to it. It's like the Civil War. It's like, even though there's something that you have to look at that, yes, that's true, the baggage that's being attached to it is way too much to overcome. So in terms of support for this, no, I wouldn't support that.
Well, okay. How would you oppose it if it did come to happen?
How would I? What? I'm sorry.
How would you go to oppose it? I mean, how would the Pirate Party oppose it? Let's say it does happen.
Well, that's a good question, because I suppose what the question is what would the Pirate Party present as a response to it, correct? Would that be...
Yeah, that's adequate, yeah.
Which I suppose if legal ID is implemented, you'd have to look at it from a real politics stand, where it'd be hard to revoke that immediately after it gets put into place. I almost feel like at that point the way to advocate for it, and obviously you have to workshop these things. You can't just come forward. I can't just come forward with my policy position or the U.S. policy position of the Pirate Party and say this is what we would do. But I think this is when I would kind of push for the land value tax thing and say, you know what, if you live on the land and you're paying the value of the land, who cares where you were born? Are you living there now? Are you paying the worth of the land that you're using? Perfect. And if we can somehow get that to be the policy, whereas you have legal ID or your real ID, and it's the country you're presently living in, whereas if the immigration policies are loosened up or made easier, and you can move to the country and obtain a real ID with ease, it actually may be a fantastic system. Unfortunately, with the way that it's presented now, it seems like it's just a way to deport, and that's just it's very faulty. It's not the way that should be done, and it shouldn't be done, period. But if real ID ever was implemented like that, I think the next step would have to be the reworking of what is, how do you get to this? How do you get to the United States? How can we implement this in a more realistic way. And I think that that would be my solution that I would try to workshop, is I would try to push for the land value solution.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that response. And we have a question from Alan Crowley. What about local decisions on nuclear energy, which are presently regulated at the national level? Where does the Pirate Party stand on that question?
I believe the Pirate Party historically has always been pro-nuclear. In fact, I believe one of the core tenets of Rick Falkvenge's Pirate Party, which is the original Swedish Pirate Party, was thorium energy, which is similar but obviously different. Obviously a little more powerful, a little more... It's a different chemistry, obviously, but it's thorium was the Rick Falkvenge's baby. But in terms of nuclear energy, I think it's clean, and I think it's sustainable, and I think that people look at Chernobyl and they say, what a scary event, and nuclear energy is terrible, and we don't want that to happen again. You're right, we don't want that to happen again. But Chernobyl was a number of things that went wrong. It wasn't just, oh, it melted. It was many things, and it wasn't just so simple as, oh, nuclear energy, look what happens if it's, look what can happen. Yeah, look what can happen if we don't take care of this properly and put all the systems in place, and if we don't take care of what we're doing. So I think it's clean, and I think Illinois actually leads the nation in nuclear power plants, if I'm not mistaken. So if a locality wants to open a nuclear power plant and the people say, yes, we're not opposed to it, we should have a nuclear powered city, let every city in America be Springfield and America be in the continent. But it's, at the end of the day, I'm pro nuclear power. And because it's not in the platform of the Pirate Party, I don't want to say the U.S. Pirate Party is pro nuclear. However, based on my experiences with pirates, we are a pro nuclear party.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a little clarifying question there. I that's great policy that you've articulated, and I think it goes back to that locality versus nationality. And presently, when the U.S. adopted a nuclear energy program, it was a two-pronged effort that was coordinated with developing nuclear weapons, and then consequently, nuclear power was sort of regulated out of existence at the national level, and that's still the case today. And I have some concerns. Project 2025 says, oh, we want to renew nuclear power, but we want to renew it based on being able to develop nuclear weapons again. And I think that the nuclear power plants that we've offered to Iran and Iraq in the past, and other countries that have wanted, or at least said they wanted nuclear energy, we perpetually offered them systems that could not be weaponized, which is great if all you want is energy. Clearly, that's not what they wanted, because they said, thanks, but no thanks, we'll develop our own, typically because they wanted a nuclear weapons program. So, yeah, and I'm just curious about where that is that a locality versus nationality level question? Is that a response from you? I'm sorry, Jolly. I missed your first name. Or is that like national security, or is that local energy policy? So yeah, I just if you could clarify, where does that fall within the spectrum of issues that the Pirate Party addresses?
Well, I'd have to assume when you're talking about foreign, that would obviously be national. Anything involving foreign relations would have to be viewed as a national standpoint. The United States Pirate Party understands that foreign policy does have to come from the national. But again, I think when you're talking about the weaponization of nuclear power, that really is the problem here. And a real issue, and this is a genuine problem that we have, is a lot of technological advancement that we have in this country has come from war efforts, or has come from military advancement and technology from the military. And it's unfortunate that we have to now associate any sort of technological advancement like nuclear energy as something that's a war measure or something that can be used as a weapon. There are a lot of things that could be dangerous in the wrong hands, and it's a shame that we've turned nuclear into this death of all. And granted, nuclear war is not fun. I'm not advocating for nuclear war, and I'm certainly not an advocate of nuclear weapons being used or implemented or anything of the sorts. That's a tough question, because I believe it is the right of the state to say if we want a nuclear power plant, we should be able to open one. But I think with nuclear being such a volatile thing, I think the United States government probably does have a lot of stringent rules to it that I'm not 100% familiar with. So my stance, I'm going to say, is that the United States Pirate Party would advocate for states to be able to move forward and open up power plants. And if it's the federal government's decision, I would, not the Pirate Party, but I would advocate for states to be able to make that decision on their own basis, with the understanding, obviously, you're not to develop weapons. I can't believe it needs to be stated, but that apparently does need to be said. But I think states should have the ability to open up nuclear power plants. Should there be a little federal insight over it? Probably. But I think the state should be allowed to operate as they choose.
Yes, thank you for that reply. And interestingly enough, you mentioned the Pirate Party's early advocacy of the thorium fuel cycle, and Section 11 of the U.S. Transhumanist Party platform states, in supporting peaceful uses of nuclear energy, the United States Transhumanist Party endorses the thorium fuel cycle, which provides for a safe and nearly limitless energy source in the absence of the development of practical thermonuclear fusion. So unless we have viable fusion reactors, the thorium nuclear power plants are our next best prospect for safe, cheap, nearly limitless energy. And this is another area where we are aligned with the original Pirate Party. So I'm very pleased to see that. Now, Daniel, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested in a project that Art and Francois were calling Sequatoria, which is basically, I think of it as there's a project called Atlas Island, which encourages people that live on boats to be able to access ever larger floating marina structures. And given the fact that we are on a water planet and that pirates are traditionally a water-based culture, do you think that this would be an interesting collaborative project for the Pirate Party to look into?
Yes, and I'm actually, it's such a shame. Darren must be having technical difficulties that he couldn't join us today, but it was, he lives in a marina. So it's actually, well, of course we'd be pro marina. I think all pirates, yeah, I think it would be. And actually I would ask you if you could send me a link to that at some point. I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think Art is actually the webmaster for sequatoria.org. And it was originally an entry in the Giga Carbon Removal X Prize team, which is how I found out about it, because you can actually remove a lot of the carbon by growing and harvesting sea culture like kelp and other kinds of products. And in fact, the oceans are where most of the heating of the planet is being concentrated. So that seems like a good place to start for reversing some of the climate disruption that humans are doing to our planet. But there's all these states that are being submerged. Tuvalu, it was originally Tuvalu 51 was Francois's name. Let's make all these island countries 51st states of the U.S. and give them things like continental union and diplomatic regency. And he's got a very interesting set of manifestos and concepts. But I do like the idea of everyone having a boat that they could retreat to, and that's their little sovereign space. That if they don't like the way things are being run, they can move to a different marina or floating, archipelago. But doing this at the equator is especially interesting because you don't get formation of cyclones or hurricanes, and the wave height is generally manageable. In fact, it was the doldrums was so calm you could get becalmed and stuck there. But I would just encourage people to become friendly with ocean-going and water-going habitat technology as a way to sort of ramp up to such a end state. So
yes,
we'll look forward to pirate collaborations. Thanks.
And the website of the Sequatoria project is sequatoria.org. Here it is. So Mitch, feel free to explore that in the future. And now there's also an interesting question about the pirate code. Mike Lazine wonders, did the pirate code really exist? And if so, was that an example of a democracy? And there is a Wikipedia entry on the pirate code, but really it refers to a pirate code, pirate articles, or articles of agreement that existed governing ships of pirates during the 17th and 18th centuries. So there were multiple pirate codes, in fact. But Mitch, I'm sure you know the history of this quite well.
Yes, as you said, every ship had a pirate code. The pirate code is very real. In fact, the Pirate Party International, which is the worldwide collection of pirate parties, published, I believe, in 2011, very early on, because the organization formed obviously after the 2006 formation of Sweden. But they posted their own pirate code. And as such, if you go to illinoispirates.org, ilpirates.org, there is the pirate code posted there. And I had made sure to have a little section specifically that I actually make anyone who wants to get involved with the pirate party, they have to agree to the pirate code, which is the pirates are egalitarian, pirates are this, pirates are that. But it is a specific, it's a 10, I believe it's 10 little sub things for the Illinois Pirate Party Code, and it is something that I try to keep a little bit of tradition. Whereas the pirates on the ship had to maintain to their code, we also maintain to our code.
That's very good, and I would encourage everyone to check out the pirate code of the Illinois Pirate Party. It includes sections such as pirates are free, pirates respect privacy, pirates are critical, pirates are fair-minded, pirates respect life, pirates are eager for knowledge, pirates are social, and pirates are international. And it explains all of these principles. So very well done. And now I also wanted to give the opportunity to Ben to ask another question.
I have kind of two questions in mind, and I'm going to see if I can riff, and I hope that you're up for a little bit of a snarky question. So pirates might not be known as the most trustworthy people, so why should we be interacting with you? And then maybe the second part of that question, what other parties and such have you guys interacted with, and what sorts of accomplishments do you have?
Sure. So why should you trust pirates? Well, simple. I think pirates have had a bad rap. I think that the term pirate has been bastardized and demonized over the past, frankly, centuries. I think if you look at the nitty gritty of it, I think pirate is used as a derogatory term. And if you look back to the original forming of the Pirate Party, they said they're going to call us pirates because we are advocating for copyright reform and being able to and patent abolition and just the things that the Swedish Pirate Party were advocating for, especially in the beginning. They said, they're going to call us pirates, or they're going to call us a pirate party. So why don't we beat them to the punch? And why don't we call ourselves the Pirate Party? Now, granted, has the name been an issue to overcome since we've started? Of course. You know, people hear the name Pirate Party, and as said earlier, someone might say, what, pirates are scary? Or what, pirates are robbers and seafaring swashbucklers? They're not political, they're not fun, they're not trustworthy. And I say I disagree. But don't take my word for it. Why don't you come to a Pirate Party meeting, check us out at uspirates.org, or watch us on YouTube. We live stream our meetings every other Sunday, including tonight, which I'm looking forward to.
Yes, indeed. And I hope to be a participant in tonight's meeting of the U.S. Pirate Party. And I will try to share a link with the other USTP officers as well if they would like to attend. Now, Ben, any follow-ups to that?
There it is. About like the accomplishments of the Pirate Party, either like the Illinois or the national, just some highlights.
Now, in terms of electoral success, it hasn't been exactly the something that you could paint as a very fruitful venture. However, we have had in 2022, we had a congressional candidate pull 10,000 votes for a United States seat. And obviously in this last election, we had Joe Sponarowski from Massachusetts for the Massachusetts State House of Representatives, pulled 22% of the vote against someone who ran unopposed for the last 4 years, or last 4 election cycles, I'm sorry, so 8 years of unopposed rule. So in terms of successes, if you're looking for this is what we have accomplished and this is what we've put forward as here is our spreadsheet of here's our trophy shelf, essentially. We don't have anything shiny to show you. But in terms of incremental change, I think that we are forced to be reckoned with. I think that as time goes on, people are going to look at minor parties like the transhumanists and like the pirates, and even like the Greens and the libertarians are going to continue to grow. And I think at some point, there's going to be that shift of it doesn't matter what you've accomplished, it matters what you're saying you're going to do for us, what you're planning on accomplishing. So even if you don't have a success rate to show for it, do you still have a goal? Are you still working towards it? And we are. And we think that, you know, we can make some substantial changes in this country and we can do some great things locally. And even though we haven't had much success in terms of electoral success, we've had certain people elected to certain lower positions that may not be in legislation, but we've had election judges especially. But we're working. We're always working, and the job hasn't stopped and it's not slowing down. And since I've been here, I can say that the Pirate Party has grown leaps and bounds in my time. So I think that while it's hard to break into the political sphere in the United States, especially for a young party as young as ours, as young as yours, it's not what have we done, it's what are we planning on doing, because our time is going to come.
Yes, indeed. And I share a similar view with regard to the prospects for the U.S. Transhumanist Party. I think the time of minor political parties has yet to come, and we need to be ready with as many options for the American people as the American people may be receptive to in the future, when the two major parties will finally be seen as completely morally bankrupt, which I think a lot of reasonable people already perceive them to be. But many people are still stuck in this binary trap. And if we can get them extricated from that trap, then the prospects of minor political parties will be quite favorable indeed. Now, I did want to share the link to the episode of the Talk the Plank podcast, where I was interviewed by Darren McKeeman and Drew Bingaman on Friday, December 13th, 2024. If anybody is interested in listening to that, you now have the ability to do so. And Ben wondered if you could share a bit more about Talk the Plank as a venue. How often is it produced? Whom do you feature there as guests?
Sure. So Talk the Plank is the official Pirate Party podcast. Now, it has only been up and running for a few weeks now. We are really just trying to test run it, see how it works out, how it plays, if people are interested. But the idea of Talk the Plank was essentially, we have ideas and we have platform positions and we have ideals that many normal people are interested in. And normal people being those that are not in the Pirate Party. I guess those in the Pirate Party are abnormal. But what I mean is just laymen, for lack of a better term. The laymen who may be watching don't realize how much they may be interested. And what we try to do in Talk the Plank is put forward guests that are either directly pirate aligned or they share things that are aligned with pirate ideals that may be of interest to those interested in the Pirate Party. You know, we've had guests such as Furman. Gennady, we had you last week, and I think it's been very successful. I think Darren, it was Darren's idea, which is why Darren gets the credit for not only being the host, but when we refer to it, we often refer to it as the California Pirate Party hosted Talk the Plank, even though it's officially the United States Pirate Party podcast. Darren's the one who's the shaker and the mover in that. So Darren deserves the credit for getting it up and running. I believe we are going to be taking a slight break for the holidays for Talk the Plank. However, otherwise we have a new episode every Friday is what we're looking at. And I think the next guest we have, spoiler alert, is going to be someone who's been involved with the Pirate Party for a while, with the United States Pirate Party for a while. So I think anyone who's interested in getting involved with the pirates, that's going to be a good episode to learn about what someone who's been involved with for years, why they may have stuck around or came back to the Pirate Party. It'll be a more pirate centric episode next time.
Yes, thank you very much for explaining about the origins of Talk the Plank and some of the future plans for it. I wish you all the best in making it a success and a long-running podcast. We've had the virtual Enlightenment Salons now for a bit over 4.5 years, actually, 4.5 years. And our partnership with KGRA Radio has extended for over 3 years and has helped to greatly increase the reach of our virtual Enlightenment Salons. But it does take a lot of consistency, a lot of dedication, and you will see the fruits of that over time. Now, interesting question from Daniel Tweed, and if you could give a little bit of background to that in the last 5 minutes or so that we have. He wonders, didn't pirates run Iceland for a while? And this was fairly recent too, in the 2010s. So what was the history behind that as far as you understand it?
So I believe the pirates in Iceland were a part of the minority government. However, the opposition government was strongly filled with pirates. I believe Iceland's success with the Pirate Party, there's a few things where I have to attribute it. One is its small population, whereas I said the Pirate Party is a more localized party. I think when you have, I believe Iceland has less than 500,000 people on the island. It becomes a lot easier to say, hey, these are the issues that matter to us. We're Iceland. We all live in Reykjavik. You know, it's not hard for a pirate to be appealing in that sense. Now, not being in government in Iceland, pirates were in government in Czechia, whereas we had a pirate who was the foreign minister, I believe, of Czechia. I don't believe that's the case any longer, nor do I believe that the pirates are part of the majority in the opposition government in Iceland anymore. It's one of those things that I think the success does boil down to just the reach, because we also have successful pirate parties in like Luxembourg, and Luxembourg is a small country, and I think the more localized you can get, the more successful the pirate party gets, which is why you're seeing the small countries have more successful pirate movements, especially Iceland.
Yes. And it does make sense. If the country is smaller, the constituency is smaller, people know one another to a greater extent and can have more dialogue, and interesting, novel, unconventional ideas can be introduced more effectively because people actually know those who are introducing them and have some common ground, some common values to form the discourse around. In a country like the United States, of course, with now I think over 320 million people, it is more difficult for a minor political party to take root. But on the other hand, it's also possible to find a larger number of supporters simply based on the sheer population size, but they're going to be more geographically dispersed. I think this speaks to the importance of international collaboration and learning from the lessons of successful pirate parties and transhumanist parties, I hope, in smaller countries, and then applying those lessons, seeing if they can scale in a larger country such as the United States. Now, we have about 2.5 minutes left. Ben Ballweg points out you also have on the U.S. Pirate Party website a position on evidence-based policies, and he would be interested to hear more about how you have ensured that your planks support this.
Sure. So we obviously, that is a foundational plank of the Pirate Party movement, is having evidence-based policy. We look at things like drug decriminalization in Portugal, where I believe the overdose rate went from like 500 a year to 50. Like we look at policies based on what is the evidence. Did this work? Did this not work? Could it work if we implemented it here? You know, it is, and again, this plays into more localized, the more local you get. We have to say, well, this was attempted here, it didn't work, but it could work here. You know, you have to have these conversations, and we hope that more often than not, we can foster dialogues to discuss whether or not these, you know, is the evidence circumstantial? Is the evidence factual? Is it statistical? Can we move forward with this? Should we move forward with this? So I think, you know, a tenet of the Pirate Party is open discussion. We believe in a free and open society, you know, free and open culture. So we think just conversation, just getting to it, circumstantial. We look at the evidence and we say, does it work?
Yes, looking at the evidence around policies is extremely important, and it is one aspect that distinguishes both the Transhumanist Party and the Pirate Party from the major political parties, which often focus on essentially appeasing their tribe, the red tribe or the blue tribe, by essentially doing tribal signaling, saying, well, I'm for this policy and you should be as well, because that signals your belonging to our group. Whereas really the questions that should be asked are, does this policy work? Does it improve human well-being? Does it help us to solve problems instead of perpetuating those problems? So I think this was an excellent salon for the purpose of discussing ideas and positions that we have in common in a very thorough and erudite and in-depth manner. And we are going to continue this conversation tonight at the Pirate Party meeting. But in the meantime, I hope that all of our viewers will live long and prosper.